Spawning institutions. Who doesn't love it? 100 of each monarch point, the institution instantly appearing in one of your provinces. You even get some extra prestige in government reform progress, because government reform progress is a green thing, and this is a positive event, therefore it must give you a green thing, because this is how events work. However, it is quite rare to spawn multiple institutions throughout the full campaign, and it's even rarer for multiple institutions to spawn in the same province. With that I ask, is it possible to get every institution to spawn in the same province? And can that province be Rome? Let's find out. Now, before we begin, the usual stuff needs to be gotten out of the way. A like on the video would be appreciated if you haven't already, and a subscription would be amazing. Playmaker has already preemptively declared victory. And here he is correct, the numbers don't lie. 10k versus 14k is not looking too good. So with that, I'm going to need some fresh recruits. And also, I'm afraid 4,000 of you will need to go find horses. Playmaker doesn't believe in cavalry, so we need to take every advantage we can. Anyway, disclaimers. Spawning every institution on Rome is the goal. Stuff like I'm compatible, standard setup, and no customations will always, as always, apply, but that's about it restriction-wise. I will also be talking about what you can do to ensure that Rome or your target province becomes the only valid province for that institution. But you will find for the first institution in question that gets insanely hard, albeit still possible. Also, while I do talk about spawning the institutions personally, I think it's reasonable to accept a situation where the institution spawns on our target province, even if we don't personally get the event. The reason I mention this is if any of you are insane enough to run this yourself, I believe this is a reasonable enough limitation. Let us also discuss feudalism. Since it is an institution, but it doesn't spawn, meaning it doesn't exactly have a spawn place. I guess Diocletian's head doesn't exactly count as a province. Finally, before we get into the video, I'm going to repeat a rule I personally use, but I don't always highlight because I assume it's part of the standard setup. But disabling DLC is not allowed. I hope I haven't spoiled the entire video. But with that said, let's begin with the Pope, since our target institution spawn province is, of course, Rome, and the Pope starts in charge of Rome. Now, as you probably know, the first institution that we have to address, the Renaissance, doesn't necessarily always spawn in Rome. In fact, more often than not, it doesn't. Renaissance can spawn in any region of Italy. Technically, it also requires feudalism to have been discovered, which I think is the most redundant requirement I've ever seen, because it starts discovered. There is no setup you can do in this game where feudalism has not been discovered for this condition to not be met. The province needs to also be stated. The province needs to be not Malta, so that's good, we don't need to worry about that. And we need to make sure that Rome is not an island. Basically, that's every single province in Italy. They're not an island. Just so we're aware, this is Italy. And to be absolutely clear, Venice does not count as an island. Basically, the only island that actually counts here is Malta. Even Corsica is not actually an island, which is fascinating to me. Meaning that we have loads of provinces that technically qualify. Unless, of course, we destate everything that isn't Rome. Because bear in mind, you have to do this by 1450. And it's not like 1444 has a lot of time left in it. You basically have a month and some extra time in it. You have 5 years to conquer all of Italy and destate the thing. Thankfully, this is where the last condition can help a bit, since we do need the province to be either a capital, at least have 20 development, or the year be 1475. Meaning that we need to either remove every single capital from Italy or remove every 20 development province. The issue is, Italy is famously very full of 20 development provinces or higher. The provinces we need to look out for specifically are Naples with 22, Florence with 28, Siena with 20, Genoa with 25, Milan with 21, Venice with 27, and in practice Mantua, because even though they're 19 development, they're probably going to click it at least once. In practice, I find that Lucca also hits 20 development by 1450, because again, the AI has literally nothing better to do with their points. Of course, this also means that we need to eliminate every single capital in Italy, and this gets difficult, because you have 16 capitals at game start to eliminate, or at least get them to move their capital out of Italy. And bear in mind, Northern Italy is inside the Holy Roman Empire, making that task incredibly difficult. Thankfully, we can just destate it, otherwise you'd have to play a horde and burn the provinces down below 20, since you can't exactly exploit development twice on, for example, Naples, by the time you to pop this. But it's technically possible to take over every single valid province in Italy that can spawn the Renaissance that isn't Rome, destate the whole thing, and be ready to, well, spawn the institution in Rome alone with that province stated. So that will guarantee the first institution of Renaissance to spawn in Rome. This will probably be the hardest thing of the run if you're trying to guarantee it in Rome. If, however, you're just happy to basically bird until you get it in Rome, that shouldn't take too long. It'll be quite annoying, and you're probably not going to have a fun time doing it, but it is possible. With that, though, we move on to colonialism. This one's surprisingly simple. Kill every single colonizer. Okay, that's not that simple, because in practice that basically means remove Castile and Portugal from the map, and probably England, France, Scotland as well in the process, and making sure you keep the Irish in check as well, because they sometimes pick up colonial ideas, as do the Dutch as well. Those tend to be the ones I find that pick up colonial ideas. You also see the odd Morocco take it sometimes. This is in practice going to be usually Portugal or Castile. That's going to be a main focus for ensuring they don't exist. The nice thing is, though, you do have a lot more time to work with this, though. 56 years, to be more specific, to eliminate every single person with colonial ideas. Although you yourself will have to take exploration and get yourself a colony in the New World to be able to qualify with Rome being the province that can spawn it. To ensure, however, that only Rome can spawn it, you can destate the rest of your land, as this will meet the not in a state requirement, ensuring that only Rome meets it. And furthermore, this is made even easier because technically the next condition requires it to just be developed at 12 or have a center of trade of level 1, meaning that because the other 3 provinces in Rome do not have centers of trade, you're guaranteed to spawn it in Rome proper if you kill every single other person that's colonizing and only have Rome stated. But the nice thing is you can also state provinces that are inland because you need to be on a port province. So as long as the province is inland, you can state ahead. So colonialism's a pretty easy one to tick off, and we move on to the next one, the printing press. This one's interesting because the issue is to qualify for spawning the printing press, you need to be either Protestant or Reformed or in North or South Germany. Now, getting Rome to be Protestant and Reformed is doable. However, you need to make sure that only Rome is Protestant and Reformed. So you need to crush the Reformation, however, go Protestant while crushing the Reformation. So the best bet I would say with this is crush the Reformation, get rid of all centres, and convert every single province that you have met, that is either Protestant or Reformed, back into Catholic to ensure that no provinces are Protestant or Reformed by 1550, and then convert to Protestant and only convert either or Reformed, and then only convert Rome to Protestant Reformed. Convert no other provinces, keep them Catholic, so goodbye religious unity. After you've done that, well, it's quite simple. Own all of Germany and destate all of Germany, because again, you can't spawn in a state. So as long as you own North and South Germany, and you've got all of the North and South Germany unstated, you can't spawn the institution. This is quite painful. North and South Germany is a massive amount of land, but considering you've conquered all of Italy in the previous run by 1450, having North and South Germany done by 1550 shouldn't be that bad, although again, incredibly painful. That will guarantee the spawn of the institution, however, on Rome. The nice news with that is, of course, you're going to be able to change the trade route to paper by event. So, yay, although it's already paper, so it doesn't really do much. After that, we get the easiest institution to spawn out of all of these in terms of guaranteeing that it spawns on Rome, and that is, of course, global trade. Make Genoa the highest value trade node in the world, and make sure that Rome is center of trade level 2. You can actually restate your land at this point if you really want, and yeah, have fun with that. Because as long as no other province in Genoa has a level 2 or level 3 center, and all have level 1s, and you can downgrade them manually, you're guaranteed to get it in Rome, since the requirement is that there has to be a level 2 or level 3 center of trade to spawn the thing. So that's going to give you global trade on Rome. And with that, though, we move on to manufactories. And by this point, conquer the world. I'll be honest, you're going to need to have the entire world conquered by 1650 to prevent the spawn of it anywhere else. The AI is going to state land, the AI is going to dev those states to 20, and the AI is going to have 2 neighboring 15 development provinces to spawn it. You can technically do some incredible snaking and try and cut up the AI to make sure that you deny as many of these provinces, but honestly, it's probably easier to actually conquer the world by 1650 than do these kind of mental math calculations of ensuring that no province has 2 neighbors, and so on and so on. It does mean that you can kind of ignore the odd islands here and there, so you don't need a true world conquest, just most of the relevant parts of the world conquered, basically. But yeah, that's kind of the big one there. Then, on Rome, make sure it's 20 development. Make sure the 2 provinces adjacent to it have 15 development and not any more. And yeah, just build a mill so you can spawn manufactories on Rome. This one, again, isn't that bad, especially within the league of the previous options. And with that, though, we move on to the Enlightenment. I'm assuming we conquered the world previously. Do not build a single university anywhere. Apart from Rome, do not take parliament, do not give anyone parliament. So basically, don't have a single university anywhere, have the world conquered, build a university in Rome. Congratulations, you've guaranteed the Enlightenment to spawn in Rome. The difficult part of that is, of course, the world conquest, technically, but if you've done everything previously to guarantee spawning in Rome, then I'm assuming a world conquest by 1700, where you just delete any university that you've conquered, and building a university of Rome is probably one of the easiest things to achieve at this point. Another thing that must be mentioned is that, of course, you're going to be on the continent of Europe. So any province on the continent of Europe, if you have a 555 ruler, you actually qualify every province in the continent of Europe. That is 30 development instead of the university requirement. So then you can bypass that by making sure you have no 30 dev provinces, or just make sure your ruler isn't 555 or better. So if you have a 646 or anything of that nature, that's fine. That's probably easier than making sure that every single province in the entirety of Europe has been undevved. Again, being a horde for that helps, as you can burn a province, then release a vassal, and then grant that vassal independence, and then burn the province again on some kind of a loop to ensure that the land is thoroughly burned. But again, just don't have a 666 or a 555 or anyone better than that 555 in charge of your country. That works as well. Then we move on to our final institution, industrialization. We can't get this one. We need to build a furnace in Rome. Rome is not a cob. Now, this is where we have to bring in our earlier requirements. What you can technically do, and this involves two semi-dodgy things, one that I've used before in videos and considered fine, but the second one, I mean, I've mentioned earlier that you can't. We can disable Rule Britannia DLC. Once you've disabled the Rule Britannia DLC, the requirements for spawning industrialization change to have either a weapons manufactory or a textile manufactory or a naval equipment manufactory on the province. The issue, of course, is we have neither of those because we're, well, Rome. And we produce paper, which is neither of those three manufacturers. So within DLC disabled, what you'll then need to do is use a certain native trick to uncolonize the province. Now, I'm still not going to be describing the trick, but if you're really curious about it, it's already been covered like 5 months ago by Student. Don't quote me on that. It might be 3 months, it might be 10, I'm not keeping track. And even Playmaker did a video on it recently, so I'm assuming it's out there at this point. There's some native shenanigans you can do to uncolonize specific provinces. I mean, I mentioned this exploit before, it's been in the game for quite a while at this point. But that's a separate debate entirely. The uncolonizing Rome gives us a chance to technically, hypothetically, roll a trade good that will allow for one of the manufacturers to be built. More specifically for fish for a naval equipment manufacturing. If you don't get fish and get something like grain, keep re-rolling. Painful? Absolutely, but doable. Meaning that technically you can get it on Rome, but you have to use a dodgy strategy as well as kind of an exploit by disabling a DLC. So is this it? With every DLC disabled? Can you not get Rome to have every institution? Well, no. But that doesn't mean there isn't a province you can legitimately get every institution to spawn in. And that province, of course, is Second Rome. No, not Byzantium. I'm, of course, referring to the Sardinian coal mines of Cagliari. An incredibly, equally painful campaign can be done to force the Renaissance to spawn on Cagliari. It'll be even more difficult than Rome, but doable. Good luck with that. And once you've done that, the rest of it isn't that much harder compared to the previous things. Same, kill everyone who isn't a colonizer, and get this province here that isn't actually center of trade to 12 development, while ensuring the other two provinces within the state are not reaching 12 development, and you haven't got anything else stated, to spawn the colonialism institution. Then for printing press, do the exact same thing as you did for Rome, but just make sure Cagliari is the only Protestant or Reformed province in the entire game. That is unstated. Then for global trade, it gets a bit more difficult because you can't get a center of trade on that province. So you're going to have to make it your capital, as this will qualify by having at least one center of trade level 2 or 3 or being your capital. So congratulations, that requirement will just be met. And again, make sure that every other province that you know does not have higher level centers of trade. Then for manufacturers, the exact same thing can be done. You can build a weapons manufacturer because it is a copper province, and its two adjacent provinces can be devved to 15 development respectively. Finally, for the Enlightenment, again do the exact same setup. Basically, just build a university on Cagliari and only Cagliari. And finally, for the industrialization, build your furnace and trade in 3 trade goods. Or wait until 1770. With that said, though, that is all I have time for today. A big thank you to all the people that supported me over at Codify, with a special thank you to Ark and Solar.